So, folks, I wanted to talk about this story that made a bit of a splash earlier today, specifically talking about the case of a trans woman in Kansas named Chris Ripper. Now, what happened with Chris is essentially the story of a lot of different trans people in Kansas right now. Many of you may recall that Kansas put together what amounts to a bounty hunting bill for trans people, where people in Kansas can now, if they feel like they have used the bathroom with a trans person in it, they can then sue said trans person for damages. Of course, this also coincides with a law passed against uh essentially driver's licenses that say, F when someone was assigned male at birth, like or vice versa. And that law invalidated any previous licenses that respected people's chosen identity and made them go back to sex assigned at birth. What, of course, winds up happening here is that you have trans people who, in Kansas, have to follow the law. So they changed their IDs back. And Chris Ripper is one of those trans people who changed her ID back. And, still have to get to work. The sun keeps rising. You got to do what you got to do to get by. And the other day, she was pulled over by a cop. And the cop, because of course this is what's going to happen, the cop is confused. The cop thinks that entire driver's license must be fake because the cop looks at the driver, looks at the ID, and it just, to a random beat cop, does not compute. Because trans people, like I know a lot of people online will tell you, we can always tell. They can't always tell. All right? And nowhere is it more obvious than in interactions with, like, cops. And of course, what ended up happening was actually pretty cool. The cop gave her a warning related, I think, to her headlights or taillights. She went about with her business, and then a few days later receives notice that she is being brought up on charges for, let me see if I can get this right here. Yes. Operating a motor vehicle without a valid license, which is a Class B misdemeanor, and carries with it 6 months of jail time and or a $1,000 fine. So, because this cop was confused by Kansas's own ID laws, it wound up being that the cop, I guess, decided later to fill out paperwork to charge this poor woman. This has now, of course, resulted in a major kerfuffle that has reverberated throughout the trans community nationwide, because everyone is paying attention to what's happening in Kansas, right? It's pretty awful. A lot of this reporting comes from Transitics, which is a Substack.
Fair, trans women always are getting warnings about their headlights or taillights, depending on how far they're in the process.
That's true. That is true. I at your comment, I am recalling how transphobes freaked out about a trans woman at the White House with her boobs out. They want it both ways. They just want to control women's bodies, and being bigoted against trans people is one way of achieving that in their eyes. I do have good news for this story, which is, while it is very scary and it could have gone really, really poorly, earlier today, Kansas did say that the charges have been dismissed by the county prosecutor. So Chris Ripper is not going to be prosecuted. That's great. But it really does drive home the fact that these states are passing laws against trans people willy-nilly, and they have real-world consequences. Like, the terror Chris Ripper must have felt was real. I can only imagine. A state that just passed a law that effectively makes citizens bounty hunters on your existence in public if you need to go pee. A state like that is one where I'm sure there are places that are more than willing to throw the book at a trans person who gets pulled over and charged with something like that. That's the other part. Exactly, Mr. Malachite. The other part is that it shows why these anti-trans ID laws make no sense whatsoever. Because if she had just been able to have the ID she originally had, this never would have happened. It never would have happened. And so you have this situation that I think really just goes to show how terrible the lawmaking around trans people in America is right now. It puts trans people in an unwinnable position and leaves them at essentially the whims of whatever county prosecutor they may have in their area. And that, like, I don't know about you guys, that does not sound like a system of justice to me. That sounds like an arbitrary system designed to punish trans people for merely existing. And I don't know about you guys. I think that's wrong. I think that's wrong. It's just wrong. And it just makes the state, essentially, it brings the state into every single citizen's pants. And there's no reason that the state should have being in your pants. What's in your pants is between you and your doctor. All right? No one else needs to know about it. Uncle Sam doesn't need to know about it. And the people who are championing that they're anti-big government certainly shouldn't be the ones putting the government into everybody's pants. It doesn't seem that difficult to me to wrap your head around, and yet conservatives fall for it hook, line, and sinker because it's against a group of people that they despise, just conceptually. And what's amazing is when conservatives actually do get to know trans people, they're suddenly like, oh wait, no, trans people are kind of cool though. Wait a minute. I know good ones. It's all those other trans people who aren't good. I just wish conservatives would think for 5 seconds about their bigotries. Because I think genuinely, if you employ critical thought, it becomes very clear that this is an untenable position for the law. It's an untenable position for trans people. It's an untenable position for anyone who values freedom. And I think that really we need to come together around the idea of freedom in America. Because right now, conservatives across the country have largely abandoned the idea of what it means to be free. Spot Dogs, thank you for the $5 super chat.
A decade ago, NC of all states got bullied into repealing anti-trans bathroom laws, but now the vibe nationwide seems to be a 180, what gives?
Well, it's billionaire money being poured into anti-trans legislation. You know, a lot of people forget, but the anti-trans panic doesn't come out of nowhere. It comes specifically from folks like Christopher Rufo and the Manhattan Institute and Alliance Defending Freedom. All of these groups working together to basically create the perfect wedge issue that can then be used to divide the American electorate. It's effectively what they've done for a long time. This idea of, well, we can't actually offer anything to our constituents, so instead we will basically create a fear campaign and then cater directly to that with bullshit legislation that just harms marginalized people, right? And we do this so that then, you know, our constituents don't realize we're robbing them blind to give massive, massive paydays to the richest people to ever exist, right? So that's kind of how we get here. We get here by trans and marginalized people in general being scapegoated. So there you have it. Not trying to derail, but isn't it clear that these laws affect male to female more than they affect female to male? They hate both, but misogyny makes male to female more confounding to them, right? Fuck this shit regardless. I mean, I think it affects like trans women and trans men differently, but the effect is still profound to both groups. You know, And of course, also like non-binary people, gender non-conforming people, like it's bullshit. It's just plain old simple bullshit. Both the Democrats and Republicans attack LGBT. That's true. Kick out the bigoted Democrats from your local party. You can do it. It is possible, but it takes you getting involved. So, all that being said, if you got anything out of this, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave a comment down about what you think about this story. I'll link the original piece with the full reporting about it down below. But yeah, it's quite something. And if you want to fight these anti-trans laws wherever you live, whether it's a conservative state or a lefty state, blue state, what have you, get involved in your local politics. Join your local Dems. Join your local DSA. All right? Move your local Democrats farther left. Kick out those corporate Democrats that are taking corporate money. All right? Get your DSA organized to organize other working class people. And if you need help going to your first meeting, we can help you out. Join our Discord, reach out to Dragonfly for help with your local Dems, reach out to GamerG for help with your local DSA. We can get you involved, and we can give you tips and tricks on how to actually succeed in organizing with what can sometimes feel like really big and pieces of political machinery. It is not as impossible as it might appear. All right, you can have a profound effect by getting involved, so please do so. Last but not least, folks, check out ImogeneOlivia.com, gender euphoric lingerie designed from the ground up for trans femmes, also tested with cis men, cis women, non-binary folks. It's comfortable, sexy, non-tucking lingerie. Check it out, ImogeneOlivia.com. Link down in the description. Let's keep on going.
Riverboat deck is going to town. All the viewers gather round. Twitch and YouTube is where she streams. All that content is bursting the seams. Politics, gaming, and plenty more. Her sense of fashion you'll adore. So grab your stuff and hop aboard. We're going straight to Jack's Discord.